allow me to tell you a story, a parable of sorts. Sometime in the past, before cars and planes, there was a man with his daughter, a loving father, a devoted daughter. Living in Australia, they were both eager to discover what life was like in the rest of the old world. And so they set out on a journey. And after a careless choice by the daughter, they got separated. Each knowing that the other would not turn back, they resolved to continue the journey, hoping to be reunited along the way. But so it was, they wound up on two different ships headed to very different places. The daughter to Cape Town, South Africa. The father to a remote town in the furthest corner of Russia. The distance between them well over 13,000 miles. For a time, the daughter looked for her father, checking records of newcomers and scouring local news, studying each new face she saw, hoping to recognize him newly arrived. But eventually, she stopped looking, figuring there was nothing she could do. She worked for a local craftsman, eventually marrying him. They had children, and every now and then she would wonder where her father was. But that faded because things were good. Then they weren't. Strained by poverty and addiction, her husband became dangerous. Her children drifted into vices of their own. Friendships with neighbors were usually tenuous because she never felt quite at home, always a little out of place. And now they unfairly blamed her, the outsider, for wrecking the life of a good local man. But eventually her husband left her, and life grew dark. Light faded from her eyes. She turned to her own escapes, giving in to more and more vices. Desperate for money, she was willing to sell anything, and often did. Sometimes she'd remember how good her father was, strong, kind. Sometimes she'd remember him for his hard work ethic, the way he expected excellence. And she figured he'd be so disappointed to see her now that maybe it was better. That she probably would have disappointed him anyway, the way she seems to disappoint everyone around her. So hope was gone. And then one day, there he was, simply standing in the doorway, plainly dressed, gently smiling. Coming from seemingly nowhere, he walked into her life, learned all there was to learn, and set to work. Building a new home for them both, nursing her back to health. It seemed day by day so plain and ordinary. The world around them seemed to carry on as normal, grinding people under the usual battles of hatred and power and money. Yet the light returned to her life, and though most people around her didn't seem to see it, the whole world looked different to her. It was different. And eventually she came to understand what had happened. Though she had stopped looking for him, he never stopped looking for her. Researching all of the travel routes of the day, gathering every story from every far traveler, he came to know where his beloved daughter was. And so he began to walk. He traveled the longest possible walking distance on the planet, one day at a time, through every conceivable environment and weather condition. It took years to make that walk of over 13,000 miles. But he never stopped. Every day, the daughter unknowingly lived her life apart from her father. He was drawing ever closer to that one sudden moment when he would arrive, turn everything upside down, or rather, right side up. We are that daughter. The Father is God. And the journey is our life, the life of the whole human race. Though we were always meant to travel the whole way with God, we got separated by sin, separated as far as was possible. Reuniting with him seemed impossible. Indeed, it was impossible for us, but not for him. As the human race plodded along, making a mess of everything, God never stopped. Although the world seemed all darkness, the light was on its way. Slowly, quietly, humbly drawing closer and closer until one day, in a lowly manger, away from the view of the world, a child was born. Though it seemed to come from nowhere, when angels appeared suddenly to the shepherds. Though it seemed sudden when John the Baptist just appeared in the desert proclaiming the coming of the light, it was not so sudden after all. Each day, each year, each generation in that long list of names the Gospel of Matthew begins with, God was drawing closer and closer to an unaware humanity like the Father, plodding through cities and wars and deserts and forests and rain and snow, all while the daughter thought each day would only bring more and more darkness. And when he arrived, it all seemed so simple and ordinary. A poor family having a child in the manger. Them quietly raising that child in a small town. Yet for those who would come to recognize this child, this arrival of God in the flesh, the whole world changed. The darkness could not overcome that light. Every day seems darker, yet the light is growing ever brighter, ever closer, even when we can't see it. That is what we mean by hope, what we mean by faith. The daughter had lost faith, so she only saw the increasing darkness of her life and sin. Not knowing the Father was on his way, she had no hope, nothing to look forward to. Yet she could have, we do have, a reason to hope. We do know our Father is coming for us. God has come for us in the Son who took on flesh as a little child on this day. This day, 2,000 years ago, he, like the Father in that parable, set to working making things right. Rescuing us from our own darkness, maybe a little at a time. And he will come again and set all things right once and for all. Though we do not know when, though to all appearances everything seems to be growing darker, our God is drawing ever nearer. That is why we celebrate today. Why every week, even every day, we celebrate the Mass, so that we don't forget like the daughter did, so that we retain the ability to see past the surface, to remember the Father drawing ever closer. Each and every sacrament is a light in the darkness, the Father in the doorway, there to bring hope, set us right. More than mere reminders, these are moments of arrival, if we have faith to see it. Confession shows us, like the daughter in the parable, that despite our Father's demanding nature, he's more interested in offering restoration than his disappointment, mercy rather than condemnation. Baptism, what made us his children in the first place. Confirmation, what ennobles and enables us to speak confidently of his return, even to skeptical and worldly neighbors. Marriage and holy orders, showing us that we are meant to give our lives to others, just as Jesus did. Anointing of the sick, that last testament that the darkness will not win, that the last time we close our eyes, a new dawn awaits us. Most of all, at each and every Mass, at each and every celebration of the Eucharist, of thanksgiving in faith and hope, God does come again on the altar, allowing us to receive him with joy and hope to sustain us until that day when joy is all that's left. Such is the meaning of Christmas, that one day all will be joy for those who have not lost hope. So draw close then to the manger on this day and see love incarnate. Draw close to the light that heals through confession and overcomes the darkness. Draw close in prayer and praise to the one who hears you whisper his name no matter the distance. Draw close to the child born into each soul that receives him worthily in communion. Week by week, day by day, stay close. For though the darkness seems to be closing in, the light is even closer and brighter than we could ever imagine.